Now, it's my very great pleasure to introduce somebody who has been one of my mentors for many years, although he doesn't know it. Really, it's through his publications and his leading-edge research. He really is one of the pioneers in the field that he will be talking about today. Howard Odum is also a past president of the ISSS, so it's particularly fitting that we have him here to do a keynote address for us. He is now emeritus in environmental engineering sciences at the University of Florida in Gainesville, and he is really one of the pioneer environmental scientists in the United States whose research and teaching over a 50-year period pioneered in fields of systems ecology, ecological engineering, and ecological economics. He started out in meteorology in World War II and took a PhD in chemistry from Yale University, served on the faculty of 5 universities, and was a longtime member of ISSS and past president in 1991-92. And he's really is a model system scientist, if I can use that term, in that he has really dedicated his career to finding common principles of all systems. His work in recent years has been on the concept of energy and transformity and energy hierarchy measures for evaluating all sectors of society. So he has been one of those people who has been able to work both in the theoretical and the practical realms. He has numerous books and publications, including very recently Ecological and General Systems, Environment and Society in Florida, Biosphere 2, and Environmental Accounting, Energy and Decision Making. Now please welcome Professor Howard Odum.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much. Somebody pass those out. So perhaps somebody on this side. Thanks a lot. Yesterday, Professor Fine and Lam made a rational and also emotional proposal for a Manhattan-type national project. They call it Ecocosm, to use systems to guide the world away from the impending crisis of unsustainable growth. This was splendid. It's something that we've been working on since the 1970s. We finally have our book on the Prosperous way down. It finally got into press after being rejected from about 100 publishers earlier on. People just cannot believe that we can come down, much less come down prosperously. In my lectures on this subject, people argue about if and when, but I get silence when I ask them to discuss that if they will go along with me, what are the policies to come down with? And it's in our culture not to look. You know, there are many books, Taylor, Brooks Adams, Jared Diamond, Kaplan, and Jay Hansen's website, Die-Off, for examples that are more and more pointing to the need to come down and how to do it. You know, many civilizations came down with a crash, but the ecosystems, many of them, every year, and some cultures, in the winter comes, they cut down and they put things in spores and migrate and store and then come back again. So we have a model there that it is possible to come down prosperously. If I understand the viewpoint of yesterday's symposium, humans have a wide choice about their future. This talk puts it another way, but not in contradiction. The principles of energy hierarchy and its role in material cycles and information determine what the culture has to do for people to continue being predominant on this biosphere. So these principles guide us, which is what I'm going to try to do is connect the principles up with some specific policies for Prosperous Way Down. Our world is like this cartoon running on oil. And there's been much discussion about Campbell's papers, oil geologists who are the best ones to listen to. There's the history of our global use of oil and the way natural gas has gradually displaced it. And here we are. Their prediction is that things tighten up in 2009, which means that prices start to rise, and you're already getting some of that. We had a preliminary look at it in the 70s. Now we're going to have it for real. And once that starts, then the economy then starts down. And the question is, how do you bring it down gently without, for example, a stock market crash? I'm going to draw from, and I'll advertise while I'm doing this, I'm going to draw from these two books that Peter mentioned, the Environmental Accounting, which has the theory and the concepts that are a little bit misleading, and then this recent one on simulation using many models to overview these concepts. All right, so I'm going to start with a little bit on these principles, and then we'll go to the specific policies. Now, an energy transformation, represented in this box, is work. In any process, there's work in the sense that energy incoming is converted into something more valuable but less energy, because second law, you have to degrade most of the available energy into used unavailable energy. And the energy hierarchy principle is that with all the transformations in the universe, you can arrange them in a series. So conversions of sunlight to biomass, or from power plants to electricity, or from different levels of information. So here's the arrangement that we have in our universe from a lower quality to a higher quality. Now the key point of this is that explains the energy hierarchy, and I'm going to drive a lot of things from it, is Lotka. You wouldn't mind backwards. Whose maximum power principle, which we modified the maximum power principle, is followed up from Boltzmann in 1922. And the key essence of this is that there's reinforcement. The system design that through natural selection of design, not of organisms, that goes on too, but the natural selection of design, the ones that reinforce their own pathway, that store and feed back and reinforce, those designs take over. And so that is the reason that these things that I'm going to talk about follow. Now, I've used this diagram for many years to explain the energy hierarchy concept. There's that well of energy. And of course, the energy itself, flow, drops each step. And the big mistake in engineering exergy analysis has been to count a joule of humans and a joule of whales and a joule of biomass and a joule of sunlight as if they were the same. That's wrong. as long as you're working at one scale, exergy or available energy is a measure of work. But if you're going to do it on different scales, you have to convert them all back to one kind of energy. And we picked the solar energy as appropriate for Earth. And so we call that energy memory. It's what was used up to make an energy at a later downstream. And we call that the transformity, and it goes up. So transformity tells you where you are in this universe, and there are many scales of transformity in information. The transformity of life itself is about 10 to the 32nd solar M-joules. We use M-joules so we won't confuse it with the energy itself. This transformities are key to all this, and we've started a handbook of energy evaluation, and we already have 2 issues out, and there are 4 in preparation. Now, the spatial aspect of this, there's the population distribution in the United States, and here's the night lights from those cities. And why do people form cities? Why does nature form ants' nests, and why do the leaves of trees converge on the trunks? And why the spatial hierarchy? It's from the energy maximum power concept or empower concept. If you've got just a little bit of energy left and you're trying to reinforce, you can't reinforce unless you concentrate it spatially. So the reason self-organization builds centers, converging to other centers and so on, as everyone is used to, is because that allows you to concentrate and thus make possible a reinforcement, and so therefore the center hierarchy takes over from other systems. So there's your reasoning for this. Now, what about the properties in time? I think people in all sciences agree that all systems pulse. And we've done a lot of simulation in different combinations, but usually something that accumulates, and then there's a frenzied consumption of it. And if we had a graph of different energy flows, as you go up the scale, there's less and less energy, but in order to reinforce with less energy, you have to concentrate not only in space, but concentrate in time. So you get the frenziedness, the pulse gets larger when it happens, but a big distance between them. So the period gets longer and longer, and the strength of the pulse, of course, earthquakes and volcanic actions in geology and information storms in our society. All right, now we're part of this big pulse because of the storage of fossil fuels and minerals that we're running our civilizations on. So instead of thinking that as a one-time thing, it may be one of the bigger pulses, but here's our pulse. It's part of something that continues. The basis right now for our civilization, summarized from Brown and Uggiotti's paper in Ambio, here it is in energy terms. Is everything, all kinds of energy are put on a common basis. And so you can see that the stored resource reserves is 33.6 times 10 to the 24th is bigger than the environmental ones. This has become the driving force of the Earth, as you well know. The ratio of the total energy to the money circulating gives you the energy-money ratio, which we use to show the economic equivalent of environment and information. So if we look at that pulse, the claimants back at the turn of the century in ecology succession was you build up to the climax and level off. And that's the model that countries right now are trying to run their economy on. And that's nonsense because it's part of this pulse. And but we have these two major stages, and the maximum power principle explains them both. If you have an excess of something, unused light or nutrients or fuels, then what takes over is the one that can cover the ground the fastest and drive the others out. In other words, it becomes competition, and that's weeds and eutrophic growth in ecology, and that's capitalism in human affairs. Compete, grow the fastest, whoever gets there first, whoever gets the loans and starts, whoever wins out. You can only do that when there's still an excess of something to exploit. Then you switch over to the high diversity, the climax here, which has got diversity, the opposite, diversity and cooperation, recycling. And so the maximum power explains them both. This wins out when you're starting up from an unused resource. This one wins out because it's efficient and recycles more tightly and gets more out of the incoming energies. So in this cycle, let's say it another way, here's the pulse of structure, assets of our society or ecosystem. And here's this zone of competition and capitalism and conquest. This is when you have wars of conquest. You can have war coming down, but you don't have any energy to fight very far on it. This is where you get Hitler and Second World Wars and First World Wars and you know. Now, let's talk then about, let's lead into the policies for coming down. If morality follows from what you have to do, people will reorganize and adapt rapidly under the pressures of crises to fit. And here we have growth. You reproduce, you compete, you displace, you borrow. Downsizing is bad, defense and war, and there's new research and technology and new heights of achievement and love of power and large differences in wealth, and creativity emerges in things that are useless. And here's the climax stage. You limit population, you cooperate, you get the view of usury. Interest becomes evil. I was raised in the Depression, and for nearly 10 years in the 30s, in a small town, Chapel Hill, North Carolina, growth was regarded as bad, and it's something to be fought against. And so people change their culture. They'd better be able to do it again. See, the partnership relationships, you consolidate your information, don't drown in it. You lose the highest items in the hierarchy, and you guard excess power as evil, and the differences in wealth are less. So if we're going to come down, then what's the nature of that coming down? With less fossil fuels that run the cities, then you have to take agriculture in the opposite direction. That is, you have to substitute people for the machines. They have to move out instead of making tractors and pesticides in the city. They go out and do more of the. And one of the ways they can do it is, it's already happening, is here's the big cities and here are the beltway concentrations, and so people will move to there and then reach out into the environment. So that's one possibility. Now, everybody says, well, we could go to photovoltaics and things like that and more efficient biomass. This beautiful story of Doherty's pairing forests on 3 continents looks at the net contribution of biomass. And we've got 20 years of this, and it's ethanol and oil shales and the oil and palm and all these things. Here's the yield in energy units, and here's the feedback from the economy. The primary source depends on having something that yields a lot for what goes back in. And in the past 30 years, the ratio for world oil has ranged from 3 to 12, back and forth, and the economies have responded. The people in Washington give other reasons for it, but that's got to be the main factor. What Doherty did by looking at data from Swedish willows, people say, well, we'll do more intensively cultivate, do biomass and wood, and we'll get more yield. The more you put into it, the more concentrated and the more often you plant, the more comes back from the economy. So the net is less. So this is a proof that you cannot beat the biomass that nature already knows how to produce. Making it more intense just cuts down the net benefit. So the time the net yields can go out here to 14 or higher as you take longer times, and you go up to original woods. Now, coming down, therefore, we have to adapt. Obviously, pulling the population down at the same rate that the energy comes down, so that they keep the energy per person the same. And so here we are coming down. The distribution of low energy and high quality energies now look like that, with a bump here for fossil fuels. You tend to lose these. But that's where the crux comes. We must, oh my goodness, haven't even started. So let's take an extra minute. All right, the crux of the matter, of course, is information. And we make many models, and you have competition between two countries, and one drives the other one down if it's simple competition. But the very exciting many model is that if you share the information and both use it, don't patent it and charge money for it, but just share it, maximize it, share it, then you get maximum empower and you get coexistence. So this, with the help of television and the internet, we're establishing and spreading, and Kosovo is part of it, and that people have to learn that they can have their local pluralism and fine, but when it comes to relationships with others, they have to adopt a different ethic, and that's a new programming, and so we have here's nations competing, or even worse, fighting, and here's the best trade combines them. Everybody knows that. But this shared information is the best model. So how do you do that when you're coming down? Information is based on, it's not free the way people think. It's based on electric power. There's already electric power shortages all over western United States because of the computer jump. We're up to 30% or more of electric of our whole economy in electricity on an energy basis. And so I just came from a conference in Oregon by international economics people looking at watersheds and struggling with hydropower versus salmon, for example. That's kind of tough decisions. And, watersheds are a hierarchy, and their transformatives get larger as their energies get less. There's huge drive there. So what we did was to take the watershed of the Douglas County, Umpqua River of Oregon here, and we evaluated total energy evaluation, which we do, and including then the hydropower and the salmon. And salmon are closed loop recycle, and there's a principle there, and there's a marvelous opportunity. Any closed loop has a constant energy flow, and it's the sum of this comes in here and goes around to that point, this comes in here and goes around to that point, and so you have, at steady state, you have a constant energy flow. And, you know, eggs up in the reds, in the rocks of the mountains, and then they come downstream and go to sea and then use the resources of the sea. So they use the mountain resources, which includes the energy of the uplift of the mountains and the energy of the rain, and this is the energy of the food chains of the sea. And you put them all together and you get this kind of a evaluation. And the transformities are written here, as you might notice. The highest transformity is in the eggs before you disperse them, because you have extracted the information into a gene packet, the egg, and so the energy is less and the energy is the same, so that has the highest transformity. Then you disperse them. Well, the result of that for the Umpqua River was that the present hydropower, which is just a smaller percentage of the whole, and the present salmon run used to be 480,000 per year returning salmon, you know, these big guys, are down now to about 10% of that. But so if you put them back to their full stage, and then you compare them with the hydropower, which turns out to have the highest energy contribution, and the whole river's energy doesn't go into salmon, just part of it. And so it turns out, and ecology type like me didn't want to see this, but if these figures further substantiated that power, the electric hydropower, is probably an order of magnitude higher. And so what that does is predict what people are going to do. When the fuels get tight, where are they going to get the electric power? And the hydropower it's got all this in it, and so people are going to gravitate to the mountains, and the civilizations will move there as they have in the past, and we'll get a return to. If we hang on to the electric hydropower and maintain the television and world networks, and we can hold the fabric of peace. And now as he shuts me down, my extra minute, here, let's get down to policies. Here's some things to do as you come down. Of course, universal employment by putting back the public works with a minimum wage. We can stop the waste in the unearned income, which is what people get from stocks, by putting a ceiling, let our internal revenue enforce a ceiling, such as $150,000 a year income. Companies can make more, but no individual can, so that forces money to go back into investment. Minimum wage with a sliding scale for those under 21 to keep the youth moving into the workforce early. And then for older guys like me, you put them on part-time and place a full retirement. I work full-time, and I still have my secretary. This $M evaluation, which use that to make a decision about what to do. The reason that foreign trade is so terrible is because the buying power and energy per money is 4 to 10 times higher in undeveloped countries than developed. That means if, as we calculated for Brazil and Ecuador, if World Bank or IMF gives them $1 million, they have to pay back $4 million. And of course they can't do it, so they default. And so the energy explains why the bad equity. And so we use energy to get trade relationships and between countries that are not free to exploit, but are equitable by trading either goods or information. And then we have to teach this maximum power morality to kids, and that's the big challenge. And so I will summarize then by saying, and this pamphlet has some other points in it, but I think that proposal of yesterday of Fay and Lam, maybe the society, and for that all of society, but particularly ISSS, which needs something to hold them together, and each person, and I'm one of the worst, wants everybody to use their system's language, and but that's all right. Let's all put it on the same problem, and then we can do a better job and quit talking about energy, about systems, and do it. So let's. So my parting word then is for us to back this concept, and I'll ask you then to be thinking about what policies, like this kind of thing, what kind of policies do you think are needed in this period of cresting, it's maybe in the next 10 years, and turning down. Thank you.